So, where is this mystery fiancé of yours? Or did you make him up? My sister Olivia's voice rang out across the garden, loud enough for everyone at her engagement party to hear. I felt my face flush as conversations around us died down, guests turning to watch the spectacle. "He's running late from work," I said quietly, gripping my glass of champagne tighter. "He'll be here." My mother laughed, a sharp, brittle sound that made my stomach twist. "Work? On a Saturday afternoon? Really, sweetheart, you don't have to keep up this charade. We all know there's no fiancé." "My name is Victoria. I'm 29 years old, and I've spent most of my life being the disappointment of the family." While Olivia excelled at everything, from her law degree to her engagement to Bradley, a successful investment banker, I chose a different path. I worked as a marine biologist, spending months at sea studying coral reef ecosystems. It wasn't glamorous by my family's standards, and it certainly didn't pay well. But it was mine. Standing in my parents' perfectly manicured backyard in Charleston, South Carolina, surrounded by Olivia's equally perfect friends and their judgmental stares, I wished I was anywhere else. The late afternoon sun beat down on us, making the silk dress I'd borrowed feel like a prison. "Victoria has always been creative," my father added from his position near the barbecue, where he was holding court with Bradley's father. "Remember when she said she was going to save the oceans? Now she's inventing boyfriends." The guests laughed. Some looked uncomfortable, but most seemed entertained by my humiliation. Olivia smiled sweetly, her hand resting on Bradley's arm, her enormous diamond ring catching the sunlight. She called 2 weeks ago to tell me about this party, and in a moment of weakness, I'd mentioned I was seeing someone. That single comment had spiraled into my family assuming I was engaged, and when I tried to correct them, they'd talked over me, already planning how to show me up at Olivia's celebration. "Tell us about him then," Olivia pressed, her green eyes glinting with malicious glee. "What does this phantom fiancé do? Where did you meet him?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. The truth was complicated. 3 months ago, I'd met someone during a research expedition in the Caribbean. His name was Alexander, and he'd been funding marine conservation projects across the region. We'd spent 2 weeks together, talking late into the night about ocean preservation, sharing meals in tiny coastal restaurants, watching sunsets from his yacht. When the expedition ended, he'd kissed me goodbye and said he'd see me again soon. Since then, we'd exchanged messages, video calls when his schedule allowed, and he'd visited me twice in Charleston. But we'd never discussed labels or the future. We simply existed in this strange, wonderful space where I felt more understood than I ever had in my life. "He's in environmental work," I said carefully. "He invests in conservation projects." My mother snorted. "So he's unemployed. That tracks." "No, Mom. That's not what I said." "A trust fund baby playing activist," Bradley interjected with a smirk. "How progressive of you, Victoria." I felt tears burning behind my eyes but refused to let them fall. This was exactly why I'd stopped coming to family events. Every holiday, every birthday, every celebration turned into an opportunity for them to remind me that I wasn't good enough, that I'd chosen wrong, that I was a failure. "He's actually quite successful," I said, hating the defensive note in my voice. "He's just private about his work." "Because he doesn't exist," Olivia sang out, and several guests chuckled. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, seeing Alexander's name on the screen. "Running late. Traffic. Be there in 20 minutes. Love you." My heart squeezed at those last 2 words. He'd started saying them a week ago, and every time it felt like a small miracle. "Let me guess," my father said, noticing my phone. "He's canceling?" "He's 20 minutes away," I replied, my voice barely audible. "Sure he is," my mother said, exchanging glances with my Aunt Patricia, who'd flown in from Atlanta for the occasion. "Victoria, sweetheart, it's okay to be alone. You don't have to invent a relationship to make yourself feel better about your choices." "I'm not inventing anything." "Then where's the ring?" Olivia demanded, grabbing my left hand and displaying it to the crowd. You said you were engaged, but there's no ring. Because there's no fiancé. I pulled my hand back, my cheeks burning. I never said I was engaged. You all just assumed. Because you let us, my mother interrupted. You let us believe you'd finally found someone because you knew we'd pity you otherwise. And here we are, pitying you anyway because you got caught in your own lie. The words hit like physical blows. I looked around the garden, seeing the mixture of amusement and secondhand embarrassment on the faces of strangers and distant relatives. The fairy lights strung between trees that would look magical at dusk now seemed to mock me, promising a celebration I'd never be part of. I think I should go, I whispered. No, stay, Olivia said quickly, her voice saccharine sweet. I want to meet this mysterious fiancé, unless you're admitting there isn't one. I checked my phone again. 15 minutes. I could endure 15 more minutes of this torture. Alexander was real. He was coming. He'd meet my horrible family, and then I'd never have to see them again. I'd already decided, standing here in this garden full of people who should love me, but only seemed capable of cruelty, that this was the last time. After today, I was done. I'll wait, I said quietly. My mother sighed heavily. Victoria, this is just sad. You're making this worse for yourself. But I held my ground, checking the time on my phone every few seconds, willing Alexander to arrive and prove them all wrong. The party continued around me, but I felt like I was standing in a bubble of isolation. Olivia had moved on to showing off her wedding venue photos on her phone to a cluster of admirers, occasionally glancing my way to make sure I was still there, still suffering. My mother had cornered me by the drink table, continuing her assessment of my life choices. You know, when you were younger, I had such hopes for you, she said, refilling her wine glass. You were so bright, so full of potential. And then you went off to study fish and threw it all away. I have a doctorate in marine biology, Mom. I didn't throw anything away. A doctorate that pays how much? $40,000 a year? $50 if you're lucky? She shook her head. Meanwhile, Olivia is making 6 figures at her firm, marrying a man who makes even more. She's building a life. You're just floating. The irony of using the word floating about someone who spent half their life underwater wasn't lost on me, but I didn't bother pointing it out. My mother had never understood my work. To her, success was measured in salary and social status, not in published research or conservation efforts. I like my work, I said simply. That's what people say when they've failed at everything else. I excused myself and wandered to the edge of the garden, where the perfectly trimmed hedges gave way to a view of the marsh beyond. This house, this life, had never felt like home to me. I'd grown up here, sure, but I'd never belonged. Olivia had always been the golden child, the one who made our parents proud. I'd been the strange one, the girl who brought home injured birds and spent hours reading about ocean ecosystems instead of socializing at country club events. My phone buzzed. 10 minutes out. Can't wait to see you. I typed back quickly. Warning, my family is awful. I'm sorry in advance. I can handle awful. See you soon. I smiled despite everything, tucking my phone away as my Aunt Patricia approached. She was my mother's younger sister, equally obsessed with appearances and social standing. She'd never married, which made her particularly vicious about other people's relationships. Your mother told me about your imaginary boyfriend, she said without preamble. I have to say, Victoria, it's a bit pathetic even for you. He's not imaginary, Aunt Patricia. Then where is he? It's been what? An hour since the party started? Any real boyfriend would have made it by now. I didn't bother explaining about traffic or work commitments. It wouldn't matter. They'd made up their minds about me years ago, and nothing I said would change their perspective. I was the failure, the disappointment, the one who'd never measure up to Olivia's achievements. My father joined us, Bradley in tow. Everything all right over here? Just chatting with Victoria about her mysterious fiancé, Patricia said with a knowing smile. Bradley laughed. Come on, Victoria. You can admit it. There's no guy. It's okay to be single. Some people just aren't meant for relationships. The condescension in his voice made my jaw clench. Bradley had always treated me like a child, even though I was only 2 years younger than him. He was exactly the kind of man my family admired. Wealthy, confident, and completely lacking in genuine warmth or empathy. He's on his way, I repeated for what felt like the 100th time. Sure he is, my father said. Look, sweetheart, we're not trying to be cruel. We're just concerned. You've always been a bit different. And that's fine. But you don't need to make up stories to fit in. Different. That word had followed me my entire life. Different because I preferred books to parties. Different because I chose science over law or business. Different because I actually cared about making a difference instead of making money. Different because I didn't see the value in their shallow, materialistic world. I'm not making anything up, I said, my voice tight. Olivia appeared at my father's elbow, her expression one of exaggerated sympathy. Victoria, I know you wanted today to be about you too, but this is getting embarrassing. Can you please just admit there's no fiancé so we can all move on? Why do you care so much? I shot back, surprising myself with my sudden anger. Why does it matter to you if I'm dating someone or not? Because you're humiliating yourself, Olivia said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. And by extension, you're humiliating all of us. Do you know how many people have asked me why my sister is lying about having a boyfriend? It reflects poorly on our entire family. I stared at her, this beautiful, accomplished woman who had everything she could want, and realized she was jealous. Not of what I had, but of the possibility that I might have found something she hadn't. Genuine connection with someone who valued me for who I was, not what I could do for them. He'll be here in 5 minutes, I said quietly. And then you can all apologize. My mother laughed. Oh, Victoria, you really committed to this, didn't you? What happens when 5 minutes pass and no one shows up? What's your excuse then? I checked my phone. Alexander had sent a new message. Arriving now. Where should I land? Land. My stomach did a small flip. He couldn't mean what I thought he meant. Could he? Before I could respond, a sound cut through the ambient party noise, the distinctive thump-thump-thump of helicopter blades. Everyone in the garden fell silent, looking up as the sound grew louder. My mother's face went pale. Is that a helicopter? It's probably just passing over, my father said, but he sounded uncertain. The helicopter appeared over the tree line, sleek and black, descending toward the open field adjacent to the property. The downdraft from the blades sent napkins and decorations flying, causing guests to scramble for cover. Olivia shrieked as her carefully arranged centerpieces toppled. I stood frozen, my heart pounding as the helicopter touched down gracefully about 50 yards away. The blades began to slow, and through the tinted windows, I could see Alexander's familiar silhouette. He was really here. He'd come in a helicopter. Victoria? My mother said weakly. That's my fiancé, I said, and for the first time all day I smiled. The helicopter door opened, and Alexander emerged, looking impossibly handsome in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He carried a large gift box under one arm and waved to the crowd with his free hand, his smile warm and genuine. Even from a distance, I could see his dark hair was slightly windswept, his tanned skin a testament to the time he spent outdoors on various project sites. He walked toward us with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin, completely unbothered by the stunned silence that had fallen over the party. Behind him, the helicopter pilot began powering down the aircraft, and I noticed another figure, a woman in professional attire, climbing out with several more wrapped packages. Victoria, Alexander called out when he spotted me, his whole face lighting up. He closed the distance between us in quick strides, set down the gift box, and pulled me into his arms, kissing me with a tenderness that made my knees weak. God, I missed you. Sorry I'm late, darling. Work ran longer than expected. When he pulled back, I was vaguely aware of my family gaping at us, but I couldn't take my eyes off him. You came in a helicopter. Traffic was impossible, and I promised I'd be here. He brushed a strand of hair from my face. Nothing was going to make me miss this. But how did you... Where did you... He laughed, that rich, warm sound I'd fallen in love with. I borrowed it from a friend who runs a charter service. Cost me a favor, but you're worth it. He finally looked around at the assembled guests, his arm still around my waist. I'm Alexander. You must be Victoria's family. It's wonderful to finally meet you all. My mother had turned an interesting shade of red, somewhere between embarrassment and fury. My father looked like he'd swallowed something unpleasant. Olivia's mouth hung open, her perfect composure completely shattered. Bradley had gone pale, his earlier smugness evaporated. You're real, my mother managed to say. Very real, Alexander confirmed with a grin. And very much in love with your daughter. I apologize for the dramatic entrance. I know it's Olivia's celebration, and I didn't mean to steal focus. He turned to my sister, extending his free hand. Congratulations on your engagement. Victoria's told me wonderful things about you. That was a lie, but a gracious one. Olivia mechanically shook his hand, her eyes fixed on his watch, a vintage Patek Philippe that probably cost more than her car. The helicopter, my father started. Just a convenient way to avoid traffic, Alexander said easily. I was at a project site in Colombia, and when Victoria told me about today, I knew I couldn't miss it. We've been apart too long already. He squeezed my waist gently. The woman from the helicopter had reached us, carrying an armload of elegantly wrapped gifts. Where would you like these, sir? These are for you, Alexander said to Olivia and Bradley. Just a few things Victoria and I picked out. We wanted to contribute to the celebration. Olivia accepted the packages with trembling hands. There were 5 boxes, each wrapped in expensive-looking paper with elaborate bows. She set them on the nearest table and carefully opened the first one. Inside was a crystal vase, clearly antique, clearly expensive. The second box held a set of monogrammed silver candlesticks. The third contained a gift certificate to one of Charleston's most exclusive restaurants, along with a bottle of wine that made Bradley's eyes widen. This is a 1982 Chateau Margaux, Bradley breathed, carefully examining the bottle. This costs... It's nothing, Alexander said dismissively. Just wanted to celebrate the happy couple properly. My Aunt Patricia had crept closer, openly staring at Alexander like he was some exotic creature. What exactly do you do, young man? I work in environmental conservation, Alexander replied. Specifically, marine ecosystem preservation. That's how Victoria and I met, actually. She was consulting on one of my projects in the Caribbean. Consulting? My mother echoed, looking at me with new eyes. Victoria's research is crucial to several initiatives I'm funding, Alexander explained. Her work on coral reef regeneration has been groundbreaking. I'm trying to convince her to come work for me full-time, but she's committed to her current research position. He looked at me with such genuine pride that my chest tightened. She's brilliant, your daughter, though I suspect you already know that. The silence that followed was deafening. My family, who'd spent the last hour mocking me, stood there realizing they'd badly miscalculated. Alexander wasn't some made-up boyfriend or trust fund activist. He was real, he was successful, and he clearly adored me. I brought something for you too, Alexander said, turning back to me. From his pocket, he produced a small velvet box. My heart stopped. I know we said we'd wait, but I couldn't hold on to this any longer. He opened the box, revealing a ring that took my breath away. It was a deep blue sapphire, surrounded by small diamonds, set in platinum. The stone caught the light, seeming to hold the ocean itself within its depths. "Victoria, I know your family thinks I'm some phantom you invented," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear but speaking only to me. "But I'm real, and so is what I feel for you. I've been carrying this ring for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. And I realize the right moment is whenever I'm with you. Will you marry me? Really marry me? Not just let your family assume things?" Tears were streaming down my face now, but they were good tears, happy tears. "You already know my answer." "Say it anyway," he murmured, smiling. "Yes. Yes, of course, yes." He slid the ring onto my finger and it fit perfectly, like it had been made for me. Because it had. He told me later he'd gotten my ring size from a mutual colleague who'd noticed which gloves I wore in the lab. The sapphire gleamed in the afternoon sun, and I couldn't stop staring at it. Alexander kissed me again, deeper this time, and I heard someone in the crowd gasp. When we broke apart, he kept his arm around me, anchoring me to this moment, to this reality that was so much better than anything I could have imagined. "So?" he said cheerfully to my family. "I understand there were some doubts about my existence. Completely fair. Victoria and I have been keeping our relationship mostly private. She wanted to be sure before introducing me to everyone. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. She's stuck with me." My mother opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. We didn't mean..." "It's fine," I said quietly, finding my voice. "You made your opinions very clear. All of you did." I looked around at the assembled guests, at my family's mortified faces, at Olivia's barely contained fury at having her spotlight stolen. "Thank you for that. It made what happens next much easier." "What happens next?" my father asked warily. "We leave," I said simply. "Alexander and I have plans this evening, and I don't think we're needed here anymore. Olivia, congratulations again on your engagement. I hope you have a beautiful wedding." I turned to my parents. "And thank you for hosting today. It's been very illuminating." "Victoria, wait," my mother said, reaching for my arm. "We should talk." "Should we? About what? How you spent the last hour telling everyone I was a liar? How you mocked my career, my choices, my life?" I shook my head. "I don't think there's anything left to say." Alexander's assistant had been standing quietly to the side, but now she approached with a large envelope. "These are for the bride and groom," she said, handing it to Olivia. "From Victoria and Alexander for the wedding." Olivia opened the envelope with shaking hands and pulled out what appeared to be a check. Her eyes widened. This is $50,000. "For the wedding expenses," Alexander said casually. "Victoria mentioned you were planning something elaborate. Consider it our gift. Use it however you'd like." The amount of money was staggering, especially coming from someone my family had assumed was either unemployed or a trust fund baby playing at activism. $50,000 was more than generous. It was a statement. Bradley looked like he might faint. "We really should go," I said, taking Alexander's hand. "We have dinner reservations, and the helicopter needs to be back by sunset." As we walked toward the helicopter, my family stood frozen in the garden, surrounded by their stunned guests. I could hear the whispered conversations starting up, the speculation about who Alexander really was, how much money he had, what it meant that he'd arrived in a helicopter bearing expensive gifts. But I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I didn't care what they thought. Alexander helped me into the helicopter, and as we lifted off, I looked down at the party below. Olivia was still clutching the check, my parents were arguing with each other, and the guests were scattered across the lawn, phones out, probably already posting about the dramatic turn of events on social media. You okay? Alexander asked, buckling himself in beside me. I'm perfect, I said, and meant it. The ring on my finger caught the light, the sapphire winking like a promise of better things to come. The helicopter ride back to the city felt surreal. Alexander held my hand the entire time, occasionally lifting it to his lips to kiss my knuckles, careful not to disturb the ring that still felt impossibly foreign on my finger. Below us, Charleston's historic district gave way to the harbor, then the open water I knew so well from my research vessels. The pilot, a weathered man named Douglas who clearly knew Alexander well, navigated us smoothly toward the downtown helipad. I can't believe you did that, I said for probably the 10th time since we'd taken off. Alexander grinned. Which part? The helicopter? The gifts? The very public proposal? All of it. You didn't have to. Yes, I did, he interrupted gently. Victoria, when you texted me earlier about what they were saying, about how they were treating you, I wanted to drive straight there and give them a piece of my mind. But then I thought about what would make a bigger impact. He brushed his thumb across my ring. I've been planning to propose for weeks. I had this whole elaborate thing arranged for next month when we'd both be back in the Caribbean. Sunset on the beach. Private dinner. Very romantic. But then today happened. And I realized the most romantic thing I could do was show up for you when you needed me. My throat tightened with emotion. You showed up in a helicopter. With gifts. And proposed in front of everyone. I may have gotten a bit carried away, he admitted with a sheepish smile. But your family needed to understand that you're not some afterthought or disappointment. You're extraordinary, Victoria. What you do matters. The research you published last year on coral bleaching prevention has been cited in 17 different conservation proposals. Do you know how many reefs could be saved because of your work? I looked down at our intertwined hands. This was what my family had never understood. To them, success meant money and prestige. To Alexander, to me, success meant making a difference, contributing something meaningful to the world. The fact that we'd found each other still felt like a miracle. What was the project site you were at today? I asked, partly to change the subject, partly because I was genuinely curious. Alexander's conservation work took him all over the world, and I loved hearing about his latest initiatives. Colombia, he said. We're working with local communities to establish protected marine zones. There's this incredible reef system off the coast that's been damaged by industrial fishing, and we're trying to give it a chance to recover. I met with government officials this morning, then flew straight here. Technically, I should have stayed another day for follow-up meetings, but I told them I had something more important to attend. Alexander, you didn't have to abandon your work for the woman I love? Yes, I did. And they understood. Well, mostly. He laughed. My project manager was less than thrilled about rescheduling everything, but she'll survive. Besides, I needed to meet the family that somehow produced someone as amazing as you despite their best efforts to make you feel otherwise. The helicopter began its descent, and I watched the city rise up to meet us. Alexander had texted me the address while we were still at my parents' house. A luxury hotel in downtown Charleston, with rooftop access for helicopter landings. It was the kind of place I'd never stayed, the kind of extravagance I'd always considered wasteful. But as we touched down and Alexander helped me out, his hand steady on my elbow, I felt a small thrill of excitement. I booked us a suite, he said as we walked toward the rooftop access door, leaving Douglas to handle the helicopter. I thought you might not want to go back to your apartment right away. Too many feelings to process, maybe? He was right. The thought of being alone in my small apartment, replaying the events of the afternoon, made my chest tight. That sounds perfect. The suite was on the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. It was decorated in soft neutrals, with a king-size bed that looked impossibly comfortable, and a sitting area with a view that made me catch my breath. Alexander tipped the bellhop who'd escorted us up, then closed the door behind us, finally giving us privacy. "So," he said, pulling me into his arms, "how are you really doing?" That was when the tears came. Not the happy tears from the proposal, but the hurt, angry tears I'd been holding back all afternoon. Alexander held me as I cried, stroking my hair, murmuring soothing words I couldn't quite make out. All the years of being told I wasn't good enough, all the comparisons to Olivia, all the dismissals of my work and my choices, it all poured out of me. "I hate that they made you feel this way," Alexander said when I'd finally calmed down enough to speak. "I hate that they couldn't see what I see, what everyone who knows you sees." "They've always been like this," I said, my voice muffled against his chest. I thought I'd gotten past it. I thought I didn't care anymore. But today, when they were all laughing at me, saying I'd made you up, I know, and I'm sorry I wasn't there sooner. Traffic really was terrible, but I should have left earlier, should have anticipated it. You came in a helicopter, Alexander. I think you made up for being late. He laughed, and I felt the rumble of it against my cheek. Fair point. Though I have to admit, the look on your sister's face when I handed her that check was worth every penny. Did you see her expression? I saw everyone's expressions. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. My father couldn't stop staring at your watch. And Bradley... I pulled back to look at him. You do know that wine was probably worth more than all the other gifts combined, right? I have a very good wine broker, Alexander said with a shrug. And I wanted to make a point. They thought you'd settled for some nobody. I wanted them to understand that you could have anyone you wanted, and you chose someone who sees your worth. Did you really spend $50,000 just to prove a point? I spent $50,000 on my future sister-in-law's wedding because my fiancé deserves to have her family see her as she truly is. Generous, kind, and far too good for any of them. He cupped my face in his hands. Besides, I can afford it. The Marine Conservation Fund has been doing extremely well, and several of my other investments have paid off better than expected. $50,000 is a drop in the bucket, and if it makes them think twice before dismissing you again, it's money well spent. I should have been uncomfortable with such casual mention of money, but I understood what he was really saying. He was protecting me the only way he knew how, using the language my family understood, wealth and status, to force them to reconsider their treatment of me. What happens now? I asked. My phone has been buzzing nonstop since we left. I'm afraid to look at it. Then don't. Not tonight. Tonight is about us, about celebrating our engagement properly. He glanced at his watch. We have dinner reservations at 8. That gives us 2 hours to relax, decompress, and forget about your family's drama. Tomorrow we can deal with the fallout. Tonight I just want to be with my fiancé. The word still felt strange, wonderful, terrifying. Fiancé. I was someone's fiancé. Alexander's fiancé. My phone buzzed again, insistent, and Alexander sighed. You should probably check that, just in case it's work or something important. I pulled my phone from my clutch and immediately wished I hadn't. 23 missed calls, 47 text messages, 3 voicemails, all from my mother. The texts ranged from accusatory to apologetic to demanding, but it was the voicemail from my mother that made my blood run cold. I put it on speaker so Alexander could hear. Victoria, you need to call me back immediately. I don't know what game you're playing, but that man is not who he says he is. I had Patricia look him up, and there's hardly any information about him online. No social media, no company websites, nothing. Either he's hiding something, or he's scamming you. Call me back right now so we can figure out how to handle this before you embarrass the family further. I stared at my phone, my mother's words echoing in the elegant hotel suite. Alexander had gone very still beside me, his expression unreadable. For a moment, doubt crept in. Not doubt about him, but doubt about my own judgment. How well did I really know him? We'd spent a total of maybe 6 weeks together in person over the past 3 months. Everything else had been video calls, messages, emails about research and conservation projects. "Say something," I whispered. Alexander ran a hand through his hair. A gesture I'd learned meant he was organizing his thoughts. "Your mother's not entirely wrong. I don't have social media. I don't advertise my work publicly. And if someone searches for me online, they won't find much beyond a few mentions in obscure environmental journals and some conference attendance records." My stomach dropped. Why? Because about 5 years ago, I learned the hard way that being too public about conservation work attracts the wrong kind of attention. He walked to the window, looking out at the harbor. I was working on a project in the Philippines, trying to shut down an illegal fishing operation that was destroying a protected reef. I was young, idealistic, and very vocal about it. I did interviews, posted on social media, made myself a target. Someone decided to make an example of me. What happened? They burned down the research station I was funding. 3 local staff members were injured. 1 lost an eye. His voice was flat, controlled, but I could hear the pain underneath. After that, I made a choice. I could keep fighting publicly and put more people at risk, or I could do the work quietly, behind the scenes, where I could actually make a difference without painting targets on the backs of the people helping me. I moved to stand beside him, taking his hand. "I'm so sorry. It's ancient history now, but it's why I keep a low profile. The people who need to know who I am, government officials, conservation organizations, researchers like you, they know. Everyone else doesn't need to know. It makes me more effective." He squeezed my hand. "But I understand why that looks suspicious to your family. To them, someone without a strong internet presence must be either irrelevant or hiding something. My mother thinks you're scamming me." "I know. And honestly, from her perspective, I can see why. Rich guy appears out of nowhere, proposes to her daughter in a grand gesture, throws money around. It looks like a con." He turned to face me fully. "Victoria, I need you to understand something. I'm not perfect. I have flaws, baggage, a past that's complicated. But I'm not scamming you. Everything I told you about my work, about who I am, it's all true. I can prove it if you need me to. I don't need you to prove anything. I believe you." "Are you sure? Because if you have doubts, if you need time to think about this, I understand." We moved fast. Maybe too fast. The proposal today was impulsive, and while I meant every word, I don't want you to feel pressured. I looked down at the ring on my finger, the sapphire catching the light. "Do you want to take it back?" "God, no. But I want you to be certain. Not because your family approves or disapproves, but because you're sure about us, about me." Before I could respond, my phone rang. My mother again. I declined the call, but immediately Olivia called. Then my father. It was like they'd coordinated their assault, taking turns trying to reach me. "They're not going to stop," I said. "Then maybe we should talk to them. Clear the air, answer their questions." Alexander checked his watch. "We can push the dinner reservation back. This is important. You want to face my family again after what they put you through today? They didn't put me through anything. You're the one they hurt. And if talking to them will give you peace of mind, help you move forward, then yes, I want to face them." Against my better judgment, I called my mother back. She answered on the first ring. "Finally. We're at your apartment. We need to talk to you and this Alexander person right now." "You're at my apartment? Mom, I didn't invite you. This is too important to wait. Your father, Olivia, Bradley, and I are all here. We need answers." I looked at Alexander, who nodded. "Fine, but we're not coming there. If you want to talk, meet us at the waterfront cafe in 30 minutes. It's public, neutral territory. Victoria, this is a family matter. We shouldn't discuss it in public. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them. I surprised myself with the firmness in my voice. My mother was quiet for a moment. Fine. 30 minutes. I hung up and immediately felt exhausted. I can't believe they went to my apartment. This is your family showing their true colors, Alexander said, sitting beside me on the bed. And honestly, it might be better to do this now, get everything out in the open rather than let it fester. They have questions. We'll answer them. Then we move on with our lives. What if they try to convince me you're dangerous? What if they make me doubt you? He took both my hands in his. Then you doubt me. That's your right. But I hope, after everything we've been through together, after all our conversations about conservation and research and the future we could build together, that you know who I am. I leaned against him, drawing strength from his solid presence. I know who you are. You're the man who spent 3 hours helping me sort coral samples even though you had meetings to attend. You're the man who cried when we saw those baby sea turtles hatch. You're the man who listens when I talk about my work, really listens, and asks questions because you genuinely care. I know you, Alexander. Good. Then let's go talk to your family and help them understand what you already know. We changed for dinner, me into a simple navy dress I'd packed in my overnight bag, Alexander into a fresh shirt he'd apparently stashed in the suite earlier. As we took the elevator down to the lobby, I tried to prepare myself for another confrontation. The waterfront cafe was a casual spot overlooking the marina, popular with tourists and locals alike. We got there first and claimed a large table on the outdoor patio, positioning ourselves with a view of the entrance. You okay? Alexander asked, ordering us both waters from the hovering waitress. No, but I will be. I twisted the ring on my finger, a nervous habit I'd apparently already developed. My family arrived exactly on time, my mother leading the charge with my father, Olivia, and Bradley trailing behind. My mother looked like she'd been crying, her makeup slightly smudged. Olivia appeared angry, her jaw set in a way I recognized from childhood arguments. Bradley looked uncomfortable. My father's expression was carefully neutral. They sat down without greeting us, and an awkward silence fell over the table. The waitress, sensing the tension, quickly took drink orders and fled. So, my mother began, her voice tight. Are you going to explain yourself? Or are we supposed to just accept that you've suddenly gotten engaged to someone we know nothing about? I don't need to explain anything to you, I said quietly. But I'll do it anyway. Alexander and I met 3 months ago during a research expedition he was funding. We've been dating since then. Today, he proposed. I said yes, that's the entire story. 3 months? Olivia scoffed. You've known him for 3 months, and you're engaged. Victoria, that's insane. You got engaged to Bradley after 6 months, I pointed out. That's different. We ran in the same social circles. Our families knew each other. You met this man on some random island. The Caribbean, Alexander interjected politely. And it wasn't random. I own property there. Victoria was conducting research on a reef system I've been working to preserve. My father leaned forward. What exactly do you do, Alexander? What's your company? Where's your office? I run a private conservation fund. I don't have a company in the traditional sense, and I don't have an office. I work from wherever the projects are. And this fund, it's profitable? Profitable enough. I also have other investments, real estate, some tech startups, a few renewable energy ventures. The fund is my passion project. The investments are how I fund it. But there's nothing online about you, my mother pressed. Patricia searched everywhere. What kind of legitimate businessman has no online presence? Alexander's expression remained pleasant. The kind who values privacy and security. I've had threats, serious ones, from people who don't appreciate my conservation work interfering with their profits. I keep a low profile to protect myself and the people I work with." "That's very convenient," Bradley said, speaking for the first time. He'd been studying Alexander with a calculating gaze. "No online presence means we can't verify anything you're saying. For all we know, that helicopter was rented with money you don't have. Those gifts were bought on credit, and you're running some elaborate long con on Victoria." The accusation hung in the air. I felt my face flush with anger, but Alexander put a calming hand on my knee under the table. "You're right," he said, surprising everyone. "You can't verify what I'm saying through a simple internet search, but I can provide verification if you need it. I have bank statements, property deeds, investment portfolios. I can give you the contact information for the director of the Caribbean Conservation Alliance, the head of marine biology at the University of Miami, who collaborates with my fund, and the governor of the province in Colombia, where I was working this morning. They'll all vouch for who I am and what I do." "Then why not just put this information online?" my father demanded. "Because as I explained to Victoria, I learned the hard way that public exposure in this line of work can be dangerous. But I'm not asking you to take my word for it. I'm offering you concrete proof." Alexander pulled out his phone. "I'm sending you all the contact information right now, along with authorization for them to discuss my work and finances with you. Call them, email them, do whatever due diligence you need. I have nothing to hide." My phone buzzed as the email arrived. I glanced at it. A list of names, phone numbers, and email addresses for what looked like very impressive people in both conservation and business circles. He'd also attached scanned copies of several documents, including what appeared to be property deeds and bank statements with balances that made my eyes widen. "This could all be fake," Olivia said, but her voice had lost some of its certainty. "Call them," Alexander challenged. "Right now. I'll wait." My father glanced at his phone, scrolling through the attachments. I watched his expression shift from skepticism to surprise to something that looked like grudging respect. He tapped on one of the phone numbers and stepped away from the table to make a call. "While he's doing that," Alexander continued, addressing my mother and Olivia, "I want to address something else. You seem to think I'm taking advantage of Victoria, but I'd argue it's the other way around. Your daughter is one of the most brilliant marine biologists of her generation. Her work is cited in conservation proposals around the world. She's dedicated her life to protecting ocean ecosystems, while most people her age are focused on building wealth and status, and you've spent today treating her like she's a failure because she chose purpose over profit." "We never said she was a failure," my mother protested weakly. "Really? Because I heard you tell her she threw away her potential. I heard you mock her career choice. I heard you suggest she'd invented me because no real man would want her. Should I go on?" The table fell silent. Olivia was staring at her hands, and my mother's face had gone pale. Bradley looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. "I didn't know you heard all that," my mother said quietly. "I heard enough," Alexander replied, his voice hard. "And I'm going to say this once clearly, so there's no misunderstanding. Victoria didn't settle for me. I'm the one who got lucky. She could have any man she wanted, and she chose me. Not because of money or status or helicopter rides, but because we share the same values, the same passion for making the world better." My father returned to the table, his expression troubled. "I just spoke with Dr. Harrison at the University of Miami. He confirmed everything Alexander said. He also said that without Alexander's funding, their marine conservation program would have been shut down 3 years ago. He called him one of the most important advocates for ocean preservation in the private sector." "That's one person," Olivia said stubbornly. "It doesn't prove—" "I can call the others," my father interrupted. "But I don't think I need to. The bank statements alone." He trailed off, looking at me with new eyes. "Victoria, why didn't you tell us about any of this?" "Because you never asked," I said simply. "You never asked about my work, about what I was doing in the Caribbean, about the people I was meeting. You assumed my life was empty and sad because it looked different from what you wanted for me. We just wanted you to be happy, my mother said. And for the first time, she sounded genuinely distressed. I am happy. I have security and stability. I just found them in a different way than you expected. Olivia's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it. Her face went white. The check. I just got a notification that the check cleared. $50,000 deposited into the wedding account. She looked up at Alexander. You really just gave us $50,000. I really did. Consider it an investment in family peace, though I'm starting to think that might have been optimistic on my part. Bradley had been reading through something on his phone, and now he set it down with a heavy sigh. I looked up the Columbia project Alexander mentioned. It's real. There are news articles about it, government press releases, everything. He really was meeting with officials this morning. He looked at me apologetically. Victoria, I'm sorry. We all thought... You thought I was so desperate and pathetic that I'd invent a boyfriend to make myself feel better. I finished for him. I know what you thought. You made it very clear. We were wrong, my father said firmly. He turned to Alexander, extending his hand. I apologize for our suspicion and our behavior today. You came to celebrate with us, and we treated you and Victoria abominably. Alexander shook his hand, though I could feel the tension in his body. I appreciate the apology, but it's not me you need to apologize to. Victoria's the one who's been carrying the weight of your disappointment and criticism for years. All eyes turned to me, and I felt the familiar urge to smooth things over, to forgive and forget, because that was easier than confrontation. But Alexander's hand found mine under the table again, anchoring me. I'm not going to tell you it's okay, I said slowly. What happened today wasn't okay. What's been happening for years isn't okay. You've made me feel like a disappointment my entire adult life because I chose a different path than Olivia. You've dismissed my work, mocked my choices, and today, you publicly humiliated me. An apology is a start, but it doesn't erase the hurt. What can we do? My mother asked, tears streaming down her face. I don't know if you can, I admitted. But if you want to try, it starts with respecting my choices. It means acknowledging that my career has value. It means treating Alexander with courtesy. It means understanding that we may not have a close relationship for a while, because I need to protect myself from more hurt. We can do that, my father said. Victoria, we love you. We always have. We just didn't show it well. I need to see that, not just hear it, I replied. And honestly, right now, I need space. Alexander and I have a dinner reservation, and I'd like to enjoy our engagement without more family drama. Olivia reached across the table, her hand hovering near mine. I'm sorry, Victoria. Really sorry. I should have defended you. I didn't, and that was cowardly. You're my sister. I should have been better. It was the most genuine thing I'd heard from her in years. I took her hand and squeezed it briefly. Thank you for saying that. The wedding, she said hesitantly. I know today was supposed to be about my engagement, and instead it became about you and Alexander. I was angry about that, but I shouldn't have been. If you want to bring him to the wedding, I'd like that. I looked at Alexander, who gave a small nod. We'll think about it. We stood, and to my surprise, my father stood too, pulling me into a hug. I'm proud of you, he whispered. I should have said that years ago. I'm proud of the work you do, the person you've become, and the man you've chosen. The words cracked something open in my chest, and I found myself hugging him back, tight. Maybe we could fix this. Maybe not. But at least we were trying. As Alexander and I walked away from the cafe, his arm around my waist, I felt lighter than I had in years. 2 weeks after Olivia's engagement party, I woke up in Alexander's arms in my small apartment. We'd spent the past 14 days in a blissful bubble, mostly ignoring the outside world except for our work commitments. He'd extended his stay in Charleston, working remotely while I continued my research at the coastal lab. Every morning, we had coffee together. Every evening, we cooked dinner and talked about everything and nothing. It was perfect. Too perfect. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Olivia. "Family dinner tonight at Mom and Dad's. Please come. We need to talk about something important." I showed Alexander the message. He was already awake, his dark hair mussed from sleep, looking unfairly handsome in the morning light filtering through my curtains. "Do you want to go?" he asked. "Not particularly. But if we're going to try to rebuild this relationship, I suppose I should make an effort." "Then we'll go. Together." I texted back a confirmation, and Olivia responded immediately with a heart emoji. That alone was suspicious. My sister didn't use heart emojis with me. We weren't that kind of siblings. The day passed quickly. I spent the morning at the lab, analyzing water samples from our latest reef survey. Alexander joined me for lunch, bringing sandwiches from my favorite deli and sitting patiently while I explained my findings about nutrient levels and their impact on coral health. He asked intelligent questions, genuinely interested, and I was reminded again of why I'd fallen for him. He saw my work as important, not as a quirky hobby or a phase I'd grow out of. At 6 that evening, we pulled up to my parents' house in Alexander's rental car. The same perfectly manicured lawn, the same imposing facade, but somehow it felt less intimidating now. Maybe because I had Alexander beside me. Maybe because I'd finally stood up for myself. My mother answered the door, and to my surprise, she pulled me into a hug. A real one, not the stiff, obligatory embraces I was used to. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. "Both of you." Inside, the dining room table was set for 6. My father was opening a bottle of wine, not the expensive kind Alexander had gifted them, but a decent vintage nonetheless. Olivia and Bradley were already seated, looking nervous. "What's going on?" I asked, as Alexander pulled out my chair. "We wanted to talk to you about something," my father began. "After what happened at the party, your mother and I have been doing a lot of thinking. About how we've treated you, about our priorities, about what really matters." My mother took a shaky breath. "We've been terrible parents to you, Victoria, for years, and we want to make amends." I glanced at Alexander, who squeezed my hand under the table. "Okay," I said cautiously. "We've set up a fund," my father continued, "for marine conservation research. In your name. It's not much, $50,000 to start. But we want to contribute to the work you're doing. We want to support you the way we should have been supporting you all along." I stared at them, speechless. $50,000. The same amount Alexander had given Olivia for her wedding. "We also want to feature your work in our holiday letter this year," my mother added. "For years we've been bragging about Olivia's accomplishments to our friends, but we've barely mentioned you. That changes now. We want people to know that our daughter is doing important work, making a real difference in the world." "And I want to apologize again," Olivia said, her voice small. "I've been thinking about what you said, about how I should have defended you. You were right. I was jealous of you, Victoria. Not of what you had, but of the fact that you had the courage to choose your own path, to do what made you happy regardless of what anyone else thought. I've spent my whole life trying to be what Mom and Dad wanted, and you just didn't. You were brave, and I was a coward." Tears were streaming down my face now. Alexander handed me his napkin, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "I don't know what to say," I managed. "You don't have to say anything," my father replied. "We don't expect you to forgive us immediately. We just want you to know that we're trying. We see you now, Victoria. Really see you. And we're proud of you." Dinner was surprisingly pleasant, We talked about my research, about Alexander's projects, about Olivia's wedding plans. Bradley asked intelligent questions about coral reef ecosystems, and my mother actually listened when I explained the intricacies of my work. It felt like having a real family dinner for the first time in years. As we were leaving, Olivia caught my arm. "There's something else," she said quietly. "I've been talking to the partners at my firm. We handle a lot of environmental law, and I mentioned your work to them. They're interested in providing pro bono legal services for conservation initiatives. I thought maybe Alexander's fund could use that kind of support." I looked at my sister, this woman I'd spent so long resenting, and saw her trying. Really trying. "That would be amazing, Olivia. Thank you. It's the least I can do." In the car on the way back to my apartment, Alexander was quiet. Finally he said, "That was unexpected." Good unexpected or bad unexpected? Good. Definitely good. Your family really is trying. They are. I didn't think they would. But they are. He brought my hand to his lips. "You deserve this, Victoria. You deserve to have people who see your worth. I have you. That's enough. You have me, and now you have them too. You can have both." Maybe he was right. Maybe I could have both. The next morning, I woke to my phone ringing. It was barely 7, and Alexander groaned beside me, pulling a pillow over his head. "Who calls this early?" he mumbled. I grabbed my phone, squinting at the screen. Unknown number. I almost declined, but something made me answer. "Victoria? It's Dr. Harrison, from the University of Miami." I sat up quickly. "Dr. Harrison, is everything okay?" "More than okay. I'm calling because we've had a development. You know the reef restoration project you consulted on last year?" "Of course." It had been one of my favorite projects, working with Dr. Harrison's team to develop new techniques for coral propagation. "The results are in, and Victoria, they're extraordinary. We're seeing a 92% survival rate in the transplanted corals. That's unprecedented. We're going to publish the findings, and we want you as lead author." My heart stopped. "Lead author?" "You developed the methodology. You should get the credit. This is going to change the field, Victoria. This is the kind of breakthrough that saves reefs around the world." After I hung up, I turned to Alexander, who'd given up on sleep and was watching me with a smile. "Good news?" "The best news. The reef project. It worked. It really worked. And they want me to lead the publication." He pulled me into his arms, laughing. "Of course it worked. You're brilliant. I've been telling you that for months." This is huge, Alexander. This could mean grants, more research opportunities, maybe even a permanent position at the university. Dr. Harrison mentioned they're creating a new marine conservation chair. He thinks I should apply. Then you should apply. Victoria, this is everything you've worked for. But a permanent position would mean staying in Miami. And Alexander's work took him all over the world. The reality of our situation suddenly crashed over me. "What's wrong?" he asked, reading my expression. "If I take a position in Miami, and you're traveling constantly for your projects, then we figure it out. I can base myself out of Miami. I have property in the Caribbean, remember? It's a short flight, and most of my work can be done remotely anyway. The only time I need to be on site is for major meetings or project launches. You'd do that? Restructure your whole life?" "Victoria, I'd restructure my whole life 100 times over if it meant being with you. You're not asking me to give anything up. You're giving me a reason to build a home base, something I've never had. I've been nomadic for years because I had no reason to stay anywhere. Now I have a reason. You." I kissed him, pouring all my gratitude and love into it. When we finally broke apart, he was grinning. Besides, Miami has excellent seafood, and beaches, and you. What more could I want? My phone rang again. This time it was Olivia. "Can I call you back?" I answered. I just got some amazing news, and is it about the paper? Because I just saw Dr. Harrison's tweet about it. Victoria, this is incredible. He's calling you a pioneering voice in marine conservation. I put her on speaker so Alexander could hear. You follow Dr. Harrison on social media? I started following a bunch of marine biology accounts after the engagement party. I wanted to understand your work better. And Victoria, what you're doing is incredible. I had no idea the scope of it. There are so many people talking about your research, so many conservation groups citing your findings. How did we not know about this? Because you never asked, I said, but without bitterness. I know, and I'm sorry for that. But I'm asking now. Tell me everything. So I did. I spent 20 minutes explaining the reef project, the methodology, the implications for coral conservation worldwide. Olivia listened, asked questions, and for the first time in our lives, I felt like she was seeing me as a person, not just the disappointing sister. I'm going to send this to everyone I know, she declared when I finished. My partners, my friends, everyone. They need to know what you're doing. After we hung up, Alexander pulled me back into bed. Your sister is becoming your biggest cheerleader. It's weird, but good weird. It's what you deserve. Everyone who knows you should be cheering for you. We spent the rest of the morning in bed, making plans. Alexander would start looking for a permanent place in Miami. I would apply for the university position. We'd set a wedding date for next spring, somewhere in the Caribbean, intimate and beautiful. Maybe on a beach at sunset, the way he'd originally planned his proposal. What about your family? I asked. You've never mentioned them. His expression grew distant. They're not in my life anymore. Long story, painful ending. The people at my conservation fund are my family now. And you. You're my family. I want to know the story. All of it. If we're going to get married, I should know. You will, I promise. Just not today. Today is for celebrating your success. He was right. Today was for celebration. The painful stories could wait. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Saw the news about your paper. So proud of you. Can we take you and Alexander out to dinner to celebrate? I showed Alexander, and he smiled. Your family really is changing. They really are. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I had everything I'd ever wanted. The publication of my paper changed everything. Within a week, I was fielding calls from universities, conservation organizations, and even a documentary filmmaker who wanted to feature my work. The University of Miami officially offered me the position of associate professor and director of the new Marine Conservation Research Center. Alexander threw an impromptu celebration at a waterfront restaurant, inviting my family, colleagues, and several of his conservation partners. My mother cried when she gave her toast. I'm so sorry it took me this long to see what an extraordinary woman my daughter is. But I see it now. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure she knows how proud I am. My father stood next, his voice thick with emotion. Victoria has always been brave enough to follow her heart, even when we tried to push her in a different direction. She's taught me that success isn't measured in dollars or status, but in the impact we have on the world. My daughter is changing the world, one reef at a time. Olivia's toast surprised me most. I spent my whole life being the golden child, the one who did everything right. But watching Victoria, I realized I was doing everything safe. She took risks. She chose passion over prestige. And she found more happiness than I've ever known. Victoria, you're my hero. I hope someday I have half your courage. When it was my turn to speak, I looked around the table at the faces of people who loved me, supported me, believed in me. Alexander beside me, his hand warm in mine. My family, imperfect, but trying. My colleagues, excited about the future of our research. 3 months ago, I went to my sister's engagement party expecting to be humiliated, I began. I was prepared for my family to mock me, dismiss me, treat me like a failure. And they did. But then something amazing happened. Alexander showed up in a helicopter. Laughter rippled around the table. But more importantly, he showed up for me. He saw me when my family couldn't. And somehow, his seeing me helped them see me too. I'm not going to pretend the years of hurt don't exist. They do. But I'm choosing to focus on the future, on the family we're building together, on the work we're going to do to make the oceans healthier and more resilient. Thank you all for being here, for supporting this work, and for believing that one person really can make a difference. Later, as the party wound down, Bradley pulled me aside. I owe you an apology too, he said. I was dismissive of your work, of Alexander, of everything you'd built. I bought into the narrative that success looked a certain way, and anything different was less than. But you've taught me something important. You've taught me that there are different kinds of wealth, and the kind you have, purpose, passion, love, that's the kind that actually matters. Thank you, Bradley. That means a lot. Olivia and I have been talking. We want to do more with our lives than just accumulate money. We're thinking about getting involved in conservation work, maybe funding some projects, using our legal and financial skills to make a difference. Would you and Alexander be willing to talk to us about it? I'd love that. As guests started leaving, my mother took my hand. I know I can't undo the past, but I want you to know that I'm going to be better. I'm going to be the mother you deserved all along. Just keep trying, Mom. That's all I ask. She hugged me tight, and I felt her tears on my shoulder. I love you so much, Victoria. I'm so sorry I didn't show it better. I love you too, Mom. After everyone left, Alexander and I walked along the waterfront, the city lights reflecting on the dark water. He pulled me close, and we stood there in comfortable silence, watching boats drift past. This is what I wanted for you, he said softly. This recognition, this support, this love from your family. You deserve all of it. I have you to thank for it. If you hadn't shown up that day, you would have found another way. You're strong, Victoria. Stronger than you give yourself credit for. I just helped speed things along. With a helicopter, he laughed. With a helicopter. I may have gotten a bit carried away with the dramatic gesture. It was perfect. You were perfect. We stood there a while longer, planning our future. The wedding would be in 6 months, on a beach in the Caribbean. Small, intimate, just the people who mattered most. My family would be there, rebuilt and better than before. Alexander's conservation team would be there, the family he'd chosen. And we'd start our life together, working side by side to protect the oceans we both loved. Thank you, I whispered. For what? For seeing me, for showing up, for loving me exactly as I am. That's the easy part. You're impossible not to love. As we walked back to the car, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The years of feeling invisible, inadequate, wrong. The moment at Olivia's party when I'd hit rock bottom. And then Alexander, descending from the sky like something out of a fairy tale, changing everything. But he hadn't changed me. He just helped me see what was already there. My worth, my strength, my right to take up space in the world. 6 months later, my parents stood on a Caribbean beach and watched me marry the man who'd arrived in a helicopter. Olivia was my maid of honor, tears streaming down her face as she adjusted my veil. My father walked me down the makeshift aisle, whispering, "I'm so proud of you. One more time." As Alexander slipped the ring onto my finger, a match to my engagement ring, with sapphires the color of the ocean behind us, I looked out at the small gathering of people we loved. My family, imperfect but trying. Our friends and colleagues, united by shared passion for conservation. And Alexander, my partner in every sense of the word, smiling at me like I'd hung the moon. The years after my family's betrayal at Olivia's engagement party had been transformative. My parents had established the Victoria Conservation Fund, which now supported 3 different marine research projects. Olivia's law firm provided pro bono legal services to environmental organizations, and she'd become an advocate for ocean protection legislation. Bradley had joined the board of a major conservation nonprofit, using his financial expertise to help them expand their programs. But the most unexpected change had been in my relationship with my family. We had dinner together once a month, and they actually asked about my work, listened to my answers, celebrated my successes. My mother had framed my published paper and hung it in their living room, showing it to anyone who visited. My father had read every article I'd written, highlighting passages and asking questions. Olivia and I had become real sisters, texting regularly, supporting each other through challenges and celebrating victories together. As for Alexander and me, we'd built a life that was equal parts adventure and stability. We split our time between Miami, where I taught and conducted research, and various project sites around the world, where Alexander's conservation work took us. We'd bought a small house near the water, where we could watch sunsets and plan our next project. Every day felt like a gift, working side by side to protect the ecosystems we loved, building a future together. Standing on that beach, exchanging vows with the man I loved while my family watched with genuine pride and support, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. My family had ridiculed my fake fiancé, called me a disappointment, tried to humiliate me in front of everyone who mattered to them. But that day had become a turning point, not an ending. Because Alexander had shown up, literally descended from the sky, and forced them to see what they'd been missing all along. The revenge I'd gotten wasn't the bitter, destructive kind. It was better than that. It was the revenge of living well, of building a life so full of purpose and love that their early dismissal of me became irrelevant. It was watching them realize what they'd almost lost and seeing them work to be better. It was standing on this beach, about to start a marriage built on mutual respect and shared values, knowing that I'd never again let anyone make me feel less than I was. As Alexander kissed me and our small gathering cheered, I thought about that girl at Olivia's engagement party, standing alone while her family mocked her. I wished I could tell her that everything was going to be okay, that the man she was waiting for would arrive in the most spectacular way possible, that her family would eventually come around, that her work would be recognized and celebrated, that she would find happiness she never thought possible. But mostly, I wished I could tell her what I'd finally learned, that her worth wasn't determined by her family's approval or anyone else's validation. She was enough, exactly as she was, doing exactly what she loved. The rest would follow.